Today we're gonna make beef ribs. Let's get into it. Alright, so beef back ribs. There's essentially two different types of beef ribs that are most common. You either have the big dino ribs called plate ribs. You know, you find them at most barbecue places. There's short ribs, English cut short ribs that you braise, and there's also these beef back ribs. Now the beef back ribs are essentially ribeye steak meat that's in between the bones. There's two different types of ways that you would cut a ribeye steak. Either it's called a rib steak, which has the bone attached, or a ribeye steak, which is where they remove the bone, and then you have the back ribs. Now a lot of times butchers will carve out a lot of that meat and leave them on the ribeye steak because they could charge more for it, 20 bucks a pound or whatever, which means that the back ribs really aren't worth too much. They don't have a lot of meat on them. They might be only 5-6 bucks a pound, and there's not really much you could do with them if they don't have a lot of meat on there. You could throw them in your Sunday sauce, you know how you doing, or render it down in maybe some soup or something like that. But if you find beef back ribs with a lot of meat on them, buy them. They have that super tender ribeye steak meat. You throw them on the barbecue. They're excellent every single time. So that's what we're gonna do today, since I was lucky enough to find a very nice rack of ribs. Without further ado, let's get to cooking. Beef back ribs are a super underrated cut of barbecue, and once you try them, you'll never go back to baby back ribs again. What we have here is a beautiful full rack of back ribs that we picked up for about $5 to $6 a pound. We're going to remove the ribs from the cryovac and pat dry with paper towel. So just to give you an idea, the ribeye steaks sit on top of these bones right across the rib cage. There's also a membrane on the bottom of the bones that I like to remove. Some people like to leave it on for presentation or just in case they overcook the ribs, they don't fall apart, but I do recommend that you all remove it. Insert a knife under the first bone to loosen the membrane. Then using a paper towel, grab the membrane and pull it off the bones. If you're lucky, it'll all come off in one strip. If it tears, just take the knife in a new spot and continue to pull it off. Now that the ribs are cleaned up, we're going to generously season with kosher salt and black pepper. I do like to season the bone side a little bit for presentation's sake, but technically there's no meat there, so you do not need to season it. Okay, our ribs are all seasoned up. We're going to let them come to room temp while we fire up the smoker. For this cook, we're using our offset smoker. We're going to get our chimney out and load it up with lump charcoal. I highly recommend using lump charcoal over briquettes as it'll burn hotter and longer. We're going to light the fire starter and place the chimney on top. After about 10 minutes or so, once the coals are lit, we're going to safely dump the coals into the firebox. For this cook, we're going to burn some hickory and cherry wood for flavor. Once the fire is burning nice and clean, we're going to close down the smoker and let it get up to temp. It's super important that you're burning a nice clean fire and you have thin blue smoke before adding any meat to the pit. I also highly recommend using a digital thermometer at grate level so you know what the temperature is closest to the meat. Once the smoker is rolling at about 275 degrees Fahrenheit, we're going to add the ribs, close it down, and then we'll work on our mop sauce. For the sauce, we're going to start by slicing half of a sweet onion. We're going to peel and chop up about 6 cloves of garlic and slice 1 lemon in half. Next, in a medium-sized pot on medium heat, melt 2 sticks of butter, then add your sliced onion and garlic. We're going to bring the butter to a gentle simmer, then we're going to add the juice of 1 lemon, along with 1/4 cup of ketchup, 1/4 cup of apple cider vinegar, 2 tablespoons of hot sauce, and 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. You can also optionally add some paprika for color, and there's no need to add any salt or pepper to this mop. Let it simmer for around 20 minutes or until the onions and garlic are nice and soft, then keep warm until you're ready to use. If you don't feel like making a mop sauce, another option is to take a squirt bottle, fill it with a little apple cider vinegar and water, and you can use that to spray the ribs if they get a little dry. So at this point, the ribs have been on for an hour and a half. We're just going to rotate them and maintain the fire. We'll let this cook for around another hour before we start adding our mop. So at this point, the ribs have been on for about 2.5–3 hours. We're going to rotate them once more, and since they're looking a little dry, we're going to start mopping with our mop sauce. This is going to add a ton of flavor and help them from drying out. We'll let the ribs continue to cook at 275 degrees for about another hour, hour and a half, mopping one more time if needed. Alright, so we're about 4.5 to 5 hours into this cook, and the meat's feeling nice and tender. The internal temperature is reading about 187 degrees Fahrenheit, so we're going to pull them off so we can wrap them and speed up the cooking process. To do this, I like to use pink butcher paper, or you can use aluminum foil and it'll work just as well. We're going to add some of the mop sauce to the bottom of the paper, then add the ribs, and then one last time mop the ribs with the sauce. Flip the ribs over so that the meat side is facing down, then optionally brush the bones with the sauce if you have some left. Now fold the ribs up in the butcher paper by folding over once, tucking the sides in, and keep folding over until all the paper is used. Once the ribs are all nice and wrapped up, we're going to head back out to the smoker and place the ribs back on the pit, meat side down, for about 1 more hour. So after about 1 more hour, the ribs are feeling nice and tender, so it's time to pull them off the pit. I recommend letting the ribs rest for at least 1 hour before slicing into them. If you're looking for an internal temperature, 195 to 205 degrees Fahrenheit internally is a great temperature to let you know that they're probably done. I don't know about you all, but I can't wait to dive into these ribs. We're gonna go ahead and slice them up and enjoy. So there you have it, we made our beef back ribs. That ribeye meat was super tender in between the bones. It added a lot of flavor by adding that mop sauce. I highly recommend it. By the time this video gets released, we will probably hit around 40,000 subscribers. I really super appreciate it. I love all you guys. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you want to see me cook next. If you enjoyed this video or you learned something, give me a like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.
Thank you.